Hello again, everybody. Hope you like my intro. It's actually pretty sweet. I finally passed the 500 views on my channel. So anyway, I've been wanting to do this piece for a while, but I've been a little hesitant, mainly because it's a lot of work. I'm going to talk about labor and the systematic destruction of the respect for it. Now, I just want to state it up front. I do not consider myself a Democrip or a Republic blood. Having said that, I will never vote for a Republican. Why? Because most of what I've seen in the squandering of this great nation has been a result of their depreciation of labor. I mean, it's not like the fight for fair labor is really a new thing. America has had a long history of abuse in its thirst for cheap labor. Let's think of some examples. Slavery for black people, the Union Pacific Railroad for the Chinese, California agriculture for the Mexicans, and of course the most modern example, free trade agreements with countries that have no fair labor practices whatsoever. I mean, nothing says you care more than the endorsement of foreign interests competing for American jobs in a shrinking economy. I mean, seriously, how do we go from the American dream of the 50s to the shitty reality that I see all around me? All of it, in one way or another, has to do with the continued depreciation of labor in America. And the best part is that this toxic spoonful of destruction that's continually heaped on the middle class is cleverly disguised in a pretty box with a bow on the top. The proverbial piece of shit in a shiny rubber bucket. It's an endless collection of mindless phrases that usually center around the words deregulation and less government, which really translates into less government for you. Clever anecdotal poison that, as history has now judged, is complete and utter bullshit. So let's start simple. Everyone needs a source of income, right? And for the vast majority of Americans, this usually means a job. And there's lots of different kinds of jobs, but all of them are constantly under attack in the never-ending search for cheaper labor. I mean, don't get me wrong, you have to give rich assholes a lot of credit. I mean, this small minority group of people was able to undo 30 years of labor progress in a generation. And we helped them do it. I mean, we went from a reasonably fair system with decent wages and low unemployment to a lopsided, unstable, and unfair set of labor and business practice, all of which, whether intentionally or unintentionally, have set out to divide the employer from the employee. Which I have a hard time understanding, because realistically there's a common interest between the guy who has the job and the person who wants to keep his job. I mean, the worker wants to safely and reliably be able to put food on his table and keep a roof over his head. And the owner is in need of quality, reliable people that show up to work every day, have a good attitude, and a positive outlook. In both instances, however, the end goal is to generate profit for the company. Unfortunately, it seems, though, that this small bit of insight has been lost largely in the endless bickering over wages and benefits, which is a perfect segue into the capitalist version of socialism, the trade union. Now, if you'll notice, when I use the word socialism, I don't have the big red scare look on my face like so many conservative pundits would wish. I think the difference is that I actually understand what socialism is, and I'm not just using it as a buzzword to incite fear into people who don't know any better. But it's cool. I'm sure there's going to be some comment somewhere where somebody's going to compare me to Hitler or Stalin or some bullshit like that. But anyway, so to elaborate a little further on the trade union, you remember how early 20th century labor fought against the Industrial Revolution's complete and total exploitation of its workforce? I'm hoping with all the budget cuts that they still teach that in school. But with solidarity and the use of the strike, they were able to fight for most of the benefits that we all take for granted today. Like the 5-day work week, the 8-hour day, overtime, affordable health care, and retirement and pension. People died for these things. But as history progresses, I see that one by one these values are going to the gallows of big business. So let's get one thing straight. Let's try to cut through some of the euphemistic bullshit that's used when we say the word big business. Because when we're talking about big business, what we're really talking about, rich assholes. Totally immoral and unethical, greedy bastards that want to maintain lavish lifestyles and power through corruption, coercion, and exploitation. And they always vote Republican. Now, don't get me wrong, not all corporations are run by these people. But in the commercial consumer market, it doesn't really matter. Because you got to remember that the capitalist model says that the most important thing is cheap products. So let's just say Joe Asshole III figures out that if he has all part-time employees, then he can essentially cheat the system out of healthcare and overtime, which is probably a pretty big savings, so he pockets some of it and then passes a little bit on to the consumer. Now right across the street you've got Honest Joe the First, who doesn't want to do that to his employees, but he's losing market share to Joe Asshole, therefore he can no longer afford to pay his employees their healthcare and their overtime. So through no fault of his own, Honest Joe now has to stoop to the same level as Joe the Asshole the Third, thus creating Joe Asshole the Second. But you know what I really enjoy is listening to poor to middle class people talk about how the poor businesses need to be released of all this restriction. They shouldn't have to pay that. They just don't have enough money. Bullshit! Yeah, that's why CEOs and executives have made millions in salaries and bonuses, far outpacing inflation or the cost of living. So I don't know, maybe we should rethink that a little bit. I'm also amazed at how unions are demonized as this plague in corporate America. Now I know the first thing that my critics are going to bring up is what took place in the auto industry, which is a fair point, but let's remember that the auto industry was never a sustainable industry, and it was stupid to think that cars were going to be around forever. And it's also duly noted that unions do generate a small percentage of incredibly lazy and opportunistic bastards, but it's by far the lesser of two evils. I mean, if this new Great Depression we're about to embark on is any indicator, when you let people with most of the money get all of the power, everyone eventually gets screwed. They even wind up screwing themselves. It's almost like the foolish quest for ridiculous wealth makes it impossible to see the forest for the trees. I don't know, maybe that's why it's one of the 7 deadly sins. But not in America! Let us also not forget that the first Great Depression was brought on by an unregulated market and a Republican president. Let's also not forget that it was a Democrat who brought hope back to Middle America, won a world war, and created the 50s American dream that everybody seems so fond of referring to. But none of that really matters anymore now, does it? Since nobody seems to give a shit about history. I mean, let's be serious, there's no time for that. I mean, after you're done working at your second or third job, because of Joe the Asshole, and when you finally get 2 seconds to yourself after taking care of all of the complicated bullshit that life now requires of us, what do? We sit back, relax, and become dumbed down by the general media. And if we still have some time left, it's absolutely imperative that we go out and buy some shit that we don't need and can't afford. Preferably on credit. But apparently we're totally content with historical ignorance. We have no savings, inadequate health care, and heavily leveraged pensions. And pretty soon, no Social Security. But it's so expensive. Why does the government have to pay for it? They just don't have enough money. Bullshit. I mean, how much health care could the last 6 years of our occupying a sovereign country that never did anything to us buy? I'm not a real big math guy, but I'm guessing probably a lot. Our priorities have been completely fucked up, and most of that is a result of the depreciation of labor in America. The corporate foothold of governmental policy by big business does not favor an intelligent and critical thinking society, because smart people know that they shouldn't be made to grovel on their fucking knees for a job. No, they want a mindless consumer that continues to buy the same cheap shit over and over and over again. And boy, have they succeeded. We are so fucking stupid that we help them to take our rights away from us with the same system that was created by the people, for the people, and of the people. Yeah, right. We're still the same nation we've always been, an unethical, opportunistic exploiter of cheap labor. So think about that the next time you see somebody picketing or on strike. Maybe you should go over and thank them for what little benefits you still have left, because what they're doing, whether you like it or not, is making America a better and fairer place to live in. So please, respect labor and fuck a rich asshole. So like I said, a lot of work. Once again, I hope everybody had a good weekend. Thank you for everybody's viewership. I appreciate it. Take it easy.